Now let's take a look at sweeping the curves inside of Houdini. Sweeping is a very essential operation for creating motion graphics. So let's see how we can do that inside of Houdini. And for that, let's hover over onto our node editor and hit tab key on your keyboard to access our node menu. And in here, let's add a geometry node by pressing the geometry. Okay. And here as you can see, we have created a geometry node. And right now we are at the scene level, and here as you can see it is written as object, which is also called a scene level. And let's double click on this geometry node to dive inside. So now we are in the geometry context, and if we want to go back at the scene level, I can click on this obj button. Now we are at the scene level. Or if you click on this arrow button, that will also bring you back at the scene level. Let's click on this geometry node, press enter, or double click on this node to dive inside. And now we are at the geometry level. And in here, let's hit tab key on your keyboard to access its node menu. And here we have these nodes that are relevant for the geometry context. Okay. And in here, first we need a backbone curve. And for that, let's add a curve node in here. Let's select this, and now when the node is selected, hover over to the viewport and press enter. And now we have the curve tool activated, and here as you can see, here we have the curve tool. And now I can draw inside my viewport. I can press the left mouse button to add a point. Now I can move my mouse around, and now I can add another point, and I can keep adding point for creating my curve. Okay, and if you press and hold the alt key on your keyboard, now we are in the camera view tool. Now I can press the middle mouse button to pan and left mouse button to rotate. Okay, and now I can navigate in the scene around. And now if I let go of alt key, now we are back again at our curve tool, and we can continue keep drawing our curve. Okay, and I'm going to draw a curve like this. And when you're done, you can press the enter key to complete your curve drawing. Okay, and now let's activate our camera view tool. Okay, and in here, let's hover over onto the node editor, and in here, let's add a sweep node. And let's type sweep, and here we have the sweep node. Sweep node has two inputs. The first one is the backbone curve, and that is our backbone curve. And we also need a cross section, that is essentially the profile curve. And for generating the profile curve, I'm going to add a circle. Let's add a circle to create a circular tube. And if I press this I button, now I can visualize my circle. And when the node is selected, press the P key on your keyboard to access its parameter. And here we have the parameter for the circles. And in here, I can adjust the radius. And if you hover over to the parameter and press and hold the middle mouse button, that will activate our incremental window. Now I can select the increment, and I can move my mouse left and right to add or subtract the increment, and that way I can adjust my scale. Okay, and here we have the divisions to create a more smooth circle, or I can also have less division for creating a more hexagonal or pentagonal shape. Okay, now I can put this into my cross section, and now select this sweep node and press the I button to view the result. And let's zoom out, and here as you can see, we have successfully swept our backbone curve. We can adjust its radius by scaling down our profile curve, the cross section, the circle. Let's hover over onto the radius. I can adjust the radius, or I can adjust its uniform scale. Let's scale it down, and here as you can see, I am adjusting the radius of the tube. And here I can adjust the divisions for creating a more smooth tube. Okay, and here as you can see, our tube has been reversed. So let's go into the circle and let's click on this reverse option to reverse the normals of our tube. Okay, and let's go into the sweep node, and here we have the parameter for the sweep. And if we take a look at the ends, right now we don't have an end cap. So let's come over here onto the end caps. The end cap is set to none. Let's change this to single polygon. That will add an end gon at the end to add an cap, or we can change this to grid to add an grid like end cap. Okay, and here we also have the option for this grid. Here I can adjust the divisions to adjust the subdivisions, and I can also adjust the scale. Okay, and also I can adjust the roundness to create a more pointier end cap. And let's change this to single polygon. Okay, and in here, if you want to smooth out the entire our backbone curve, and here if we take a look here, as you can see at the curve, we have a very jagged curve that is not very smooth. And for smoothing out, I can add a resample node. If I activate my point display option, here as you can see, we have these points, and right now we have very few points. And let's add a resample node in here by typing a resample. Let's add this in between, and now if we view the result of the resample node, here as you can see, now we have a lot more points. So resample is resampling our input curve. And onto the resample, let's bring up its parameter. And right now here we have the treat polygon as straight edges. We can change this to subdivision curve, and that way we can smooth out our curve. And onto the length, we can adjust our how many points we want to be resampled, and essentially by adjusting the length we can add more or less points. Okay, let's keep this at default 0.1, which is a good value. Okay, and now let's view the result of our sweep, and let me hide my point display option, and here we have a very smooth sweep. And now let's make our backbone curve grow. Okay, and for that let's add a node called curve. Let's type curve, and let's add this in here onto our option, onto our this backbone curve, and let's bring up its parameter of the curve. And here we have the option of first U. We can adjust the first U to grow our curve in this direction, or we can also enable the second U to grow our curve in another direction, or we can also disable the first U, and now we can only adjust the second U to make our curve grow. Okay, and now if we view the result with the sweep, and let me adjust the second U option, and here as you can see, by adjusting the second U we can make our curve grow. We can animate this, and first at the frame number 1, press and hold the Alt key on your keyboard and left mouse button on the parameter. That will add a key, and here as you can see, our parameter has been turned into green, which means that a keyframe has been added. And now let's go into the frame number of maybe 74, and at the frame 74 let's change this to all the way up to 1, and now press and hold the Alt key and left mouse button, and now as you can see, our parameter has been turned green again, which means that another key has been added. Now we can play back. Let's go back and let's hit play. Okay, so here as you can see, we are growing our tube. And if the default your simulation is going fast, your animation, which means that this real-time option has been disabled. And if I play, here as you can see, my animation is fast. And to play back at 24 the FPS, correct real-time playback, you need to enable this real-time option, this clock icon. Okay, and now we can play back our animation at real time, and you can change this setting as a default. If you click on this option, that will enable our global animation option, and in here we have the real-time playback option. Click on this and press save as default to save these settings as a default. Okay, and now let's add a more interesting backbone curve, and for that I'm going to use a helix. So in here let's add a helix node, and let's view the result of the helix. That will generate a basic simple helix. We can bring up its parameter, and here we have its option for family. The family is set to Archimedean. We can change this to logarithmic, and that will create a spiral like helix. Okay, and here we have the option for the height. I can adjust its height. If I change this to 0, now here you can see I have this spiral at the 0 0, or it does not have a y offset. So we are only trying this helix at the xy plane. Let's adjust its height to add a y offset, or we can change this to Archimedean. And in here we can make our helix bigger or smaller, and let's adjust its turns to create more of these turns. Okay, and we can also adjust its start radius, and here I have the radius scale, which is essentially a multiplier, and here I have the increase per turn option that will create a more thicker scale at the top. Okay, let's change this to a default value of 0, and in here let me adjust its start radius to create a more thicker helix. Okay, and now let's put this into our sweep, and here we have this spring, and onto the circle we can always go back, and in here we can adjust the divisions. Okay, and we can also enable the arc type from close to open arc, and in here arc angle, let's adjust its angle to create a more open of this our shape. Okay, so now we have this hollow inside cavity, and we can add the thickness later by adding a poly extrude node. So let's add a poly extrude node. Now let's connect this into our first input. Let's view the result, and onto the poly extrude let's add its distance to add a thickness. Okay, and we also need to add the output back option to fill out the back. Okay, so now we have added a thickness, and in here onto the circle I can adjust its divisions to create a more smooth shape. I can play around with the arc angle. Okay, and right now we are using a circle as our profile curve as a cross section. We also have more interesting shapes. If we type a labs super shapes, and here as you can see we have the labs super formula shapes. Let's add this, and if we view the result of the super formula shapes, here we have a basic square. Here I can adjust its width as well as height, and we also have more shapes. If we click on this, here I can create a circle and also triangles. I have a lot more interesting shapes in there. So let's add a star in there. I can adjust its number of spokes as well as this pinch and bloat option to add a pinching effect. And now let's use this as our cross section, and let's view the result again. And here as you can see the scale is way much bigger. So let's go into the super formula shape, and here we don't have the option for scale, but we only have this width and height option. We can add a transform node at the end to scale down our cross section. So let's add a transform node and add this in this side, and onto the transform let's adjust its uniform scale to scale down, and let's view the result of our sweep. Okay, and right now the normals are not correct, so after the sweep let's add a normal node to add normals. Let's add this. Okay, so now we do have normals, and we also have these UVs. If we zoom in, here as you can see we have these UVs. If we press and hold the middle mouse button, Here as you can see, this node is creating the normals as well as UVs for us, which we actually don't really need. So let's remove these attributes. If we middle mouse button, these are vertex attributes. Okay, so after that, let's add an attribute delete node, and let's add this in here onto the attribute delete node. Let's click on this delete non-selected to delete all of these attributes. Okay, now if I middle mouse button, here as you can see, now we don't have any attributes, and now we don't have any shading errors, which is good. And now we actually don't need this normal node because the sweep node will generate normals for us. Okay, and here as you can see, we have a law dense mesh, and that is because if we take a look at our profile curve, and if the node is selected, come over here onto the viewport and press the F key on your keyboard to frame your object. Okay, and in here, if I enable my point display option, here as you can see, I have a lot more points. That is why we have the dense mesh at the sweep. And to fix this, let's add a resample node in here, and let's add this. Let's view the result, and here as you can see, now we have a lot less point, and that is also these less points. Our shape has been not correct. So to correct this, let's go into the resample and let's lower down its length option to add more points. Okay, so let's keep adding these points until we have a good looking profile shape. And now let's view the result with our sweep. Let me hide my point display, and now we have a much more reasonable point count. Okay, and onto the super formula shape, we can keep adjusting the shape. Let's change this to option spherical. Okay, and we also have the option for the flower, that is a flower looking shape. Let's go into the sweep, and it's not adding its end cap. Let's see why is that. Let's change this to grid, and now we have the end cap. Okay, and for some reason the single polygon option is not working. Let me adjust this to side single polygon, and that is also not working. Let's add this grid, and in here we can always adjust its end scale for creating a more round or flat end cap. Okay, let's keep the end cap scale to 1 to create a more round of this cap. And let's go into the helix in here, and let me increase its height, and let's also increase its radius. Okay, and in here, if you want to cut out the shape from the profile curve in here, and press the F key, and here as you can see, we can by pressing the F key we can frame our object. And in here, to cut out this cross section shape, we can add a curve node in here. Let's add this curve node, and now if we view the result with the sweep, press the F key to frame our view. Let's go into the curve, and let's enable our second U option and disable the first U. Okay, and in here we can create the same effect that we were actually creating with the circle by cutting off the circle. And here we are also cutting off this profile shape. Okay, let me change this to first U again, and let's adjust its parameter as well as second U, both of them, so I can adjust both of them at the same time. Let's view the result with the sweep. Let's go into the curve. Let's adjust this parameter to add an opening. Okay, and we can also sweep this around with our font. So if I add a font node in here, let's type in here Houdini. So that is our font. Okay, we can add this into our cross section. Okay, let's add this and let's view the result of our sweep. And into the sweep, let's change this to none. Okay, and or maybe let's change this to single polygon. And here, as you can see, now we are sweeping with our font, okay, to create a more interesting shapes for creating motion graphics. And in Helix, let me adjust its height, as well as let's lower down its turns. Okay, I think that is good enough. And we can go into the sweep node, and in here we have option for adding the roll. We can add a roll for rotation. Okay, I can enable the twist, okay, to add a twist into our shape. Let me change this to default 0 again. Okay, here I can animate the roll to add a rolling animation. And also I can add a curve node to make our font grow. Let's add a curve node in here, add the helix, and onto the curve, let's disable the first U and enable the second U. And we can animate this parameter. Press the Alt key, let's add a key. Sorry, we need to change this to all the way to 1 because we are on to the frame 76. Let's change this to 1 and add a key. Let's go back at the frame number 1 and let's change this to 0 and press and hold the Alt key and click to add another key. And here, as you can see, we are growing our helix curve. And now let's go back onto our sweep and let's view the result. And here, as you can see, as we are growing, our font is rotating, and that is because the sweep node is adding some attribute for generating these rotation. And to fix this jiggly animation, we can generate our own all of these attributes, these rotation attribute, and that way the sweep node will use these rotation attribute. Okay, and for that we can add a orientation along curve. Okay, let's add this after the helix. And if we view the option here, as you can see, we have these same option. If I enable the additional rotation option, I can enable the roll or twist, and these are the same option that are available onto the sweep rotation parameters. Okay, now because we are generating our own all of these rotation and we are adding the curve after that, now if we view the result, we shouldn't have the same problem. Okay, and now here, as you can see, the animation looks stable. And if we want to animate the roll or the rotation, we can add this onto the orientation along curve. Here I can add the roll to create a same effect. Okay, and onto the helix, we can create more of these helix. So onto the spiral count, let's add another spiral. Okay, and let's enable the turns ratio to create more or less of these turns. I can also create more of these spirals. Okay, let's hit rewind and let's play. Okay, and by using these sweeps and these simple node, you can very quickly create very complex looking motion graphics. Okay,